Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be working on a really cool project that I started over a year ago. I cut down this black cherry tree on my property and milled it on my sawmill into lumber. I let it dry for about a year to fully dry out before I could start using it. Now it's ready to use, and in this video I'm going to be turning that lumber into a beautiful black cherry hutch for my wife. It's really cool to be able to build something yourself and not have to go to the store and buy it. But then even a step further, there's something really special about being able to use what you have on your property to make something useful, like turning this tree into lumber and then into a beautiful piece of furniture that we can then enjoy and use for many years. Now this tree was in the way and I did need to clear it out, and I wanted to plant a fruit tree where it was at. And so I replaced it with another tree, but I wanted to make sure I used this as much as possible. This is beautiful cherry wood, so I'm going to mill everything that is large enough and straight enough to mill. I'll turn into boards. Then I'll take the scraps for milling, and anything too small to mill I'll cut into firewood and use to heat our house this winter with our wood stove. Once I'm done milling, I'll stack all this wood up and put spacers in between so air can get through the pile of wood, and then cover this with a tarp and let it sit for about a year to fully dry out before I can start using it. Now here's the stack of wood. I'll come back once it's dry and I'll have to send all of this through my planer. All of that wood is rough cut. It has lots of splinters, a lot of imperfections. But after sending all of the boards through the planer, and now they're at the correct thickness for building this hutch, I'm going to cut all of the boards to length and start laying this out. The hutch is going to be a little deeper than the boards that I got from this tree, so I'm going to cut 2 boards and glue them together. And in order to get the gap to match up perfectly, I'm not going to send it through the joiner. I'm going to use a trick with the table saw. I'm going to screw 2 boards together, send it through the table saw with the blade right in between the gap, and this will shave off just a little bit off of each board, making the line exactly the same on each side. It basically makes a mirror image so that those 2 boards match up perfectly and there's no gap. Then I'll take my biscuit cutter and cut a few grooves in here for the biscuits to sit in so that I can glue this up. These will help align the boards and also strengthen it up. Then I'll fill up each of the pockets with wood glue, and I'll completely cover the surface on both sides so I get a good bond with this joint. Then I'll clamp the boards together and let it dry. Once I glued up all of the shelves, I'm going to take it back over to the planer and send it through a few times to shave off the excess glue, and if any of the boards didn't quite match up perfectly, this will shave that off and have it a perfectly straight surface. So I'll send it through a few times on each side. I wanted to also take down the thickness a little bit So this will lighten up the whole structure. This wood's really dense. It's going to be heavy if all of it is 3/4 inch or an inch thick. So I'm going to shape it down to closer to 5/8, and then I'll move on to the next step. I'm going to take the side panels that are going to be basically holding everything together. I'm going to take my router and cut some grooves for the shelves, the top and the bottom panels to go in here, and then the countertop as well for the hutch. I'll take a straight edge, clamp that down onto these side panels, and run my router down that straight edge to make a nice straight groove for the shelf to sit down into. And for the shelves that don't extend the full width of the side panels, I'll have to use a chisel to square up that edge so that the shelf fits in there perfectly. To make the hutch look a little bit more like a hutch and not just some bookshelves, I'm going to cut a notch out of the side panels that will also create sort of a countertop portion of the hutch, and this will separate the top portion from the bottom and make it a little bit more separated. Next, I'll use my table saw and cut a groove on the back of the side panels for the backing of this hutch to set down into. This will make it look a little bit better and keep that seam out of sight. I cut all of my shelves about a 1/2 inch long so that I can come back once they're glued together and cut it once more and make sure everything's square before assembling it. Now I'll glue up the side panels, each of those grooves. I'm thoroughly covering that with glue, and then I'll tap those shelves into place and set the other side panel on top. Once I have that in, I'll make sure all of the shelves line up. Then I need to clamp this together, put clamps on either side, pressing the two side panels together, holding that until that glue fully dries. Then I'll take the countertop. This is an 1.25 inch thick piece, so significantly thicker than the rest of the shelves. It will look a little more substantial and feel like a countertop. I'll glue that in place, clamp it, and then I'll add the backing to the cabinet. This 1/4 inch plywood I got from the store is the only piece on this cabinet that isn't from that black cherry tree. I wanted to lighten up this cabinet because it was starting to get pretty heavy, and I was worried that if I put a solid wood back on this, it was going to be significantly heavier. So I decided to go with this 1/4 inch plywood. I'm going to end up painting that plywood backing so that you don't see that that's actually plywood. It will look really nice in contrast with the dark cherry wood that we're going to have on the finish. Next, I'll start making the frame that's going to go on the front of this hutch. I'm going to start with the bottom, and I want to have a little bit of a decorative edge along that bottom board. After laying out the design that I want, I'll use my jigsaw to cut it out. For the front frame, I'm going to be hiding all of the screws and pockets on the back side, so I'll drill a few holes for that and then glue it and screw it all together. After building the frame, I'll glue up the surface before clamping that frame in place and holding it till it dries. Now I'll repeat the same steps for the top frame. It's basically the same, except there's no divider board in between the two doors. It's just a little bit different for the top. To lighten the hutch up, at least visually, I'm going to soften some of the edges with a router. I'll take my 45-degree angle bit on this and just shave off the corners. This will also make it a little bit softer to the touch. They're not as rough and sharp on those edges now. And I really like the look of that 45-degree angle straight router bit. It makes a really nice edge on this and dresses up the whole piece. After routing, I'll come back with my sander and prep the surface because we're going to be staining next. For the stain, I'm actually going to be using this trick that you can naturally or at least make the wood look like it's naturally aged using this drain cleaner. You can look this up online. There's quite a few people that have tried this, and there's a specific ingredient in this drain cleaner here that reacts with the cherry wood and darkens it within seconds. It's really cool how it works. I'll end up putting probably a teaspoon of cleaner for each cup of warm water that's in this jar. Mix it thoroughly until it's clear, and then I'll paint it onto the surface with a brush, and it quickly starts activating, and by the time I get the entire surface covered, this looks like beautiful dark cherry wood. Now this is drain cleaner, so you'll want to follow the warnings on the container. This container said not to allow this to come in contact with your skin, and so I wore some gloves. It ended up dripping on my wrist a few times. I wiped it off and washed it off later, and I was fine, but you'll just want to make sure you take precautions and you're careful with this. Now, I also did this outside. I don't know that this is harmful in any way, but there is a bit of a scent that comes off of this as you're painting it onto the wood, and so being outside with lots of fresh air was better in my opinion. Now the last thing I need to build is the doors. I'm going to do solid wood doors on the bottom, and then I'm going to use glass panel doors on the top. So I'll make the frames for both of them pretty much the same, and then I'll cut a groove for the solid wood panel on the bottom to set down into and glue into place, and I'll cut the same groove for the top ones for the glass panels to go into place. Now I'll cut the wood panels that are going on the bottom doors. I'll send that through the planer a few times till I get to about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'll put some wood glue down on the frame and clamp that in place until it dries fully. For the top doors, I don't have a center board to cover up that gap in between the doors, so I have a flap on one of the doors that will close first, and then the other door will close on top of this and sort of seal that up a little bit more. Next, I'll stain the doors to match the hutch with the drain cleaner, and this is a small batch, so I figured I'd just do this inside my shop, and I had a fan blowing to keep some fresh air coming in. It wasn't too bad. One thing I did notice with this drain cleaner, as it dries, it actually gets a little bit chalky on the surface or a little dull. And so I wiped off the residue that's left over, and it still didn't look quite like it did when it was wet. But as I added on the clear coat, it brought back that deep red, dark color again, and it soaked into the wood and ended up finishing it really well. So I was happy with how dark it came out and how bright the red was once I got that clear coat on it. Next up, I need to mount the bottom doors. I'll put the hinges on, and then I also need to put a magnet stop for each of the doors to keep them shut, and also a little pull knob for the 2 doors as well. Next, I'll assemble the top doors, and before I put in the glass panes, I'm going to put a thin bead of silicone around the perimeter and then put it in place. This will help keep the window from rattling around when you open and close it. And then I've got these small pieces of wood that I'm going to glue around the frame to securely hold that glass in place. For the top doors, to make them a little bit more secure, there's not a magnet latch holding them shut. Instead, there's a little bolt latch on the one door that has a flap on it that goes in the back, and then on the front of this one, it has a twist latch that locks it into place. Now that just about finishes up this video. Here's the finished hutch. I mentioned that we painted that back panel. I don't have footage of that. I didn't record that portion, but everything else you saw in this video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, hit that like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.